All right, let's get started. So today we have hip opening. And hip opening is, as they say, hips are the junk drawer of life. So it's like spring cleaning for the body. So getting all of your supplies that you need, perhaps folded blankets, perhaps, I don't think you'll need a strap today, but I like to have all my supplies near maybe a couple of blocks, but probably not. They're just nice to have around you. And then when you're ready, I'm following a specific sequence here, and the sequence says we can start in Virasana, but that is not always accessible to everybody. So of course you could sit up on a block, or if you're just like, no, I really like child's pose to start, which I often do, feel free to start in child's pose, whatever centering posture you like. There's a few of them. This one is specifically an internal rotation for the hips, which is why I've added it to the sequence. But really whatever feels right for you today. So taking a moment to get all settled into your centering posture. And one of the first things I like to do when I get settled is exhale. So often, and especially before I jump on Zoom, I'm running around making sure my microphone's working, the camera's set up, and, is the hair in place? Just kidding, I don't check that. I probably should next time. But that hustle and bustle of the day, we can all relax in centering. So that's what this is for, really feeling that calmness. And just knowing that this time is just for you. So it's a bit of an awareness of your surroundings in combination with allowing yourself that time and that space to learn and grow. And even allowing yourself to get in the zone a little bit, into a little bit of a meditative state, where you can hear your surroundings, but you're focused on just the area that is your mat. Maybe even a few deep breaths here. And then slowly, let's make our way all the way up and back to a downward facing dog. This is a non-Vinyasa class today, but that's not to say we can't do a little downward dog here and there. So I like to take just a moment to get my hands warmed up before I head into down dog. And then tucking those toes under, hips press up and back. And maybe walking it out a little bit. Some organic movements here as long as the alignment is healthy, meaning shoulders are away from the ears, feet are parallel. And then moving within that healthy range of motion. And then slowly scoop the belly in, lowering through hands and knees. And then we'll come to seated once again, Sukhasana, easy pose, or cross-legged. Every time I do downward dog, I think, why don't I do this throughout the day, every day? It feels really nice. So sitting up nice and tall, we'll start with churn the butter. So what we do here is thinking of your head and hips as like the top of, if you've actually ever made butter, it's got that sort of thing that goes around and around. I've never made butter, but I've made ice cream, and it does the same thing. So churn the ice cream perhaps, lifting up nice and tall. So the head stays, and then let's lean over to one side with the ribs and then forward with the ribs. The head will move probably, but it's okay. And then other side and then back. So it really resembles that machinery with the top and bottom staying and the middle portion moving. So keep going. Just a few rounds here. And I love this one because it's a multitasker. And you guys know how much I like multitasking. Why do one thing when you can do 10? So we're warming up the spine, the whole length of the spine, including the neck and the low back, mid back, and also the hips. So this is a hip opening class. So see if you can even feel the upper leg bone moving in the sockets, in the hips. And then wherever you are, reverse. So other direction. We move forward, we move back. And of course, side to side throughout. And keep going. I find one direction works a little easier than the other. This one for me is more like an octagon instead of a smooth churning the butter. So if that's you as well, visually try to make your circles smoother. And then just take a moment, maybe even closing the eyes. See if you can get back to that meditation state that we were in. We're centering, just feeling the flow. Wherever you're at. Last one. And then floating up to neutral. From here, just a nice little in-between stretch. So bring the feet forward in Dandasana staff pose, and then we'll lean back onto the hands, fingers pointing forward. Purvottanasana, it's like reverse plank. You can do the full variation with the hips up if you want to. I don't want to today, so I'm gonna keep my hips on the floor, keep it a little more gentle, and then straightening through the arms. I actually feel a really nice wrist stretch here. And then carrying on with that stretch, lift the heart up, and then if it feels okay on your neck, even gently lowering the head back. And slowly reverse. And then we'll prepare for Baddha Konasana, bound angle pose. So let's bring the soles of the feet together, drawing them inward. And then allow the knees to fall out to the sides, lifting up nice and tall. If it's a struggle to stay upright, you can, if you want to, lean back onto the hands. But I highly recommend sitting up on a folded blanket until you have not just perpendicular, but slightly forward, because that makes the stretch more passive, which makes it easier, which makes it really effective. So leaning forward, and then just a few deep breaths here. We will be doing some standing postures today, but it's nice to stretch a little bit first. This is like your pre-yoga stretch before we do the yoga. Yoga before yoga. Not here too long, but just enough to feel a little bit of a stretch, feeling that openness. And if the body gives you more space, taking that space. One deep breath here. And then slowly come on up. And then let's return to Dandasana staff pose, maybe shaking it out a little bit. I have a little triad of poses here. So that was one, or a trio. And I like to do this periodically throughout the day too. If I feel like I don't have a lot of time to do yoga, but I have like 5 minutes. I'll do these 3. The next one is Parivrita Janu Shirshasana. So let's head into, it's half Baddha Konasana, so half what we did last time. Draw the left foot in. So it's kind of like Janu Shirshasana, head to knee pose, but this one's revolved. So then I want to turn. Trying not to overcomplicate things, but what we essentially are doing is getting the feet as far apart as possible, except for one is bent in. And so in that spirit, we want them to be, English this morning, Carla, equal. You know what I mean? So like, as if you're in the splits, but one leg is bent. I don't know why that was challenging for Carla this morning, but it was. So if you can, even more. So I suppose I have a little more. So you can just sort of, like, you can see, you don't need to be graceful here. You just reach that leg as far as it'll go that way, and then the knee as far as it'll go that way. Lifting up nice and tall. Feeling elegant, even if you weren't super graceful and even slightly clumsy. Reach towards your extended leg foot. So eventually we'll be clasping with the palm up, the inside arch of the foot. Until you get there though, I suppose I could if I really tried, but this morning I would like to place my hand on the inside of the leg. So this feels more stable. And then this is a side bend. So my left arm or my top arm is reaching up and over to the side. And if you sit at a desk a lot, this might feel like a doozy of a stretch. Reaching and lengthening. So we want to find the edge but not push past it. So just a little stretch. Couple deep breaths. And then scoop the belly in, come on all the way up, and then we'll flip to the other side. So bending one leg in, extending the other, and then taking the same care and attention as the first side, trying to get, so the upper legs will be at the same angle, moving out. Lifting up nice and tall. Sometimes one side cooperates more than the other. And try not to worry about that. Lifting up nice and tall, reaching towards the extended leg. And then other arm up and over to the side, reaching and lengthening. Few deep breaths. So gentle stretch, not overdoing anything. And to come out, scoop the belly in and come on all the way up. And then the next one is both legs are out. So Upavishta Konasana, but we're not looking for the full splits or anything. So if you are really flexible, what we're looking for is almost like a 90-degree angle. For most of us though, that's just sort of naturally where we go is 90 degrees. So if you can go slightly more, it is slightly, well, I don't know. Let's not pull out our protractor today and let's just head forward. So again, if it's a struggle to reach forward a little bit, up on a folded blanket is good. And we're not here too long. So for this one, you can reach your hands forward if you like. Eventually we're clasping the outer edges of the feet. So sometimes you might want to reach along the leg. And then we'll slowly come on up. So that's our little trio of yoga poses. From here, let's head up and back to a downward facing dog. So got a little bit of a stretch there. Now we'll come to hands and knees. And then tucking the toes under, reaching up and back with the hips. I like to get a little toe stretch in there first. Feels nice. And just a couple deep breaths here. So
So feeling that nice length in the backs of the legs. Maybe walking it out a little bit. And then send the feet forward all the way to the top of your mat, and we'll land in a forward fold. So feel that length in through the backs of the legs. Couple deep breaths. And then slowly ragdoll, one vertebra at a time, all the way to standing. And then we'll prepare for a couple of standing postures. So the first one is Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2. So we'll start by taking a big step back with the left foot. And then what we'll do with the feet here is right toes face forward to the top of the mat. And we don't want to forget about the back foot. So internally rotating it just slightly, just a little bit, just a little bit. But when we do that, often the hips will sort of split the difference. So what we're trying to do is have the hips facing directly to the side. So both of the bones here are facing the side. And then we'll head into a T position with the arms. Inhale to lengthen. And on the exhale, bending the front knee. So focusing on the hip though, not necessarily the strength of the legs, which need to be strong to stay there, but thinking of that motion of bending through that front knee. And then also the motion of, there's a tendency to kind of do this, again, splitting the difference. The body likes to be even. So what we're doing though is not splitting the difference. We're keeping the hips level, and we have an outward motion of that back leg. And then also same thing with the front leg, but in a different way. So I'm not going to get overly complicated today, even though I really, really want to. And then looking beyond the front fingertips, bending, and then take a peek to, I will overcomplicate this part because it is important. So we want the torso to be completely perpendicular. And I know mine tends to kind of wander, so you can even look down. Are the hips level and center? And are the ribs on top of the hips, shoulders on top of the ribs? And then to come out, we simply straighten that front leg and then lower the arms. The next posture is very similar, so we're just going to take a little mini break here. And then we'll head into extended side angle, Utthita Parshva. So we start in Warrior 2. So we do the exact same thing. Inhale to lengthen, exhale, bending through that front knee. Also, be sure that the knee is right over the ankle, so it tends to want to tip inward. Don't let it. It's right in line with the kind of the middle and second toe. And then from here, inhale to lengthen, and then extended side angle. The forearm is on the leg, upper arm is alongside the ear, and we are rotating to reach the heart towards the sky. If you know the full variation or any other variation, you're welcome to head into that. I'm gonna stay in phase 1 this morning and really focus on alignment. So opening up the heart to the sky and breathing. We're trying to keep the torso completely straight here. There's a tendency to banana, so we don't want to do that. Lower ribs down, and the body is straight. That should feel like a nice stretch on that front hip. To come out, we come back through Warrior 2, and then straightening through the front leg. And then I like to just kind of heel toe, and then back to Tadasana mountain pose at the top of your mat. And then we'll prepare for the other side. So we'll step back with the right foot, and same. So we face the long edge of the mat. Left toes point directly to the top of the mat, but the right toes tip in just slightly. Double check the torso. So we want the hips directly facing the long edge of the mat. And you can kind of feel like the body wants to split the difference. So my hips are sort of halfway in the middle. And when I open up my right hip,
So towards the back, I can feel that stretch in the left leg. Arms go up. Inhale to lengthen. Exhale, bending through the front leg for warrior two. Double check alignment. Is the body perpendicular to the earth? If not, fix it. Bending deep. So also I like to just sort of take a moment and feel that stretch in the back hip. Feel the stretch in the front hip. Just sort of checking in, scanning the body. Lengthening through the spine, lengthening through the arms. And then inhale to lengthen everything. And exhale. Release the pose, but not too much because we're heading into extended side angle, Utthita Parshva Konasana. So one more time, arms lift. Inhale. Exhale, bend, warrior two. And then we'll place the left forearm on the left leg and the top arm alongside the top ear. And then visualizing the torso is straight, opening up the heart to the sky, breathing deep. Be sure to do the same variation on that second side. And to come out, we head back through warrior two. And then release the pose, heading back to mountain at the top of your mat. So the next couple poses are one of my favorites, Utthita Trikonasana triangle pose. So we'll take a big step back with the left foot to face the long edge of the mat, but not as big as warrior two. So triangle pose is like a medium-sized stance, but still that heel to arch alignment with the right toes facing forward, left toes tipping in just slightly. And then arms go up to a T position. And then for this one, I like to think of it in a couple different parts. So the first step is as we reach, we want to allow the hips to pivot. So the back hip moves up, the front hip moves down. If you're not very flexible, you might feel like I'm doing it and nothing's moving, and that's okay too. So the front hip moves down and you might feel an increase of the stretch in that leg. And then when you can tip no further, keep the torso completely straight. And then right hand on the right shin, left arm reaches up to the sky. Still opening, we still want to feel that rotation. There is a tendency to let the body tip inwards. We want to open that up and breathing free. Be extra sure there is some weight into that bottom hand. So the idea, this is not meant to be a core strengthener. This is a stretch. So we don't want the back to work super hard here, except to lengthen. So be sure that if your hand's on the floor or on your foot or on your shin, you do have a little bit of weight there. You want the strength to be scooping the belly in and lengthening, not holding your body up. To come out, belly scoops in. Come on all the way up. If you need to bend the leg to come out, that's totally fine too. From here, we're heading into Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. So, I lied. You might actually really want a block for this one. If you're flexible, what we'll do is bring the fingertips all the way to the floor, or not. You can use your balancing talents and skills here. So let's start in like a little warrior two, like a baby warrior two. And then I'm actually going to shuffle towards the back of my mat here. And then we transfer the weight to the front foot. Left toes are just there for show on the floor and to help the balance. But we're facing the long edge of the mat. Then, like a teeter-totter, back leg lifts up first. That initiates the movement. And then you might just want to stop right here. Or to keep going, we tip slowly. So slowly, keep the supporting leg straight though. So that's the trick. If you want to place your hand onto something, maybe a block. I actually don't use a block very often in this instance because it's not as sturdy and stable as the floor. You know what I mean? So if you need to place a little weight, it's, I don't know, I would prefer a chair or something. And we don't need to be here all day. Inhale to lengthen. Exhale, keep lengthening. Inhale all the way up. And then we'll head back to Tadasana mountain pose. I feel like I could do an entire class just on that pose. So just working on whatever we can with that pose, and it will get better, it will get stronger, it'll get more flexible, and all the rest of it. Let's not overcomplicate things, Carla. That's my note to myself. Preparing for triangle on the second side, Utthita Trikonasana. So we've got our heel to arch alignment in a not humongous stance, but like medium-sized stance, arms up to a T position. As we reach, allow that back hip to move up. So that's really important in order to keep the spine long and neutral. And then we lower, tipping, 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 and reaching and lengthening. Opening the heart up towards the sky. Breathing free. And to come out, inhale all the way up. And then we'll prepare for Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. So again, I've got myself situated towards the back of my mat. And then little baby warrior 2. So bending that front knee, and then transfer the weight onto that front leg so that the back toes are just on the floor, just enough for balance. Scooping the belly in, arms in a T. Remember, you don't have to reach the floor. So this is working on strength and flexibility and balance all at the same time. Back leg initiates the movement. So back leg lifts up, and then we slowly reach the fingertips towards the floor. Maybe they reach all the way there, maybe not. And then opening up the heart to the sky, but try not to fall backwards. So lots is going on here. Lengthening everything. To keep it simple, just lengthen everything. Reaching, lengthening all the limbs. Reaching, reaching, reaching. And on an inhale, floating all the way up. And returning to Tadasana mountain pose. And then preparing for our last standing posture, which I also love, Malasana garland pose. So for this one, we step the feet apart. If you have a normal width mat, I like to have my toes over the edge and my heels on the mat. This one is a B mat and it's extra wide, so I have just barely my toes over the edge. And then we lift up nice and tall. Toes are tipped out, but so are the knees. So that rotation happens right in the hip socket. So we don't want the knees to rotate. We want the knees to be facing the same direction as the toes. And then lifting up nice and tall. Let's bring the hands to heart center. Inhale to lengthen. On the exhale, start to bend the knees, but do try to turn the knees out to the sides as much as they'll go. Keep the heels on the floor. And then maybe we can bend all the way down. Maybe we bend down a little bit. And we're in Malasana garland pose. So if you are in and your hips are all the way down, you can use there's a tendency, I'm letting my knees fall in and my slouching to happen. So we want to do the opposite of that. You can use the elbows to help the knees move out to the sides and lifting up tall. Keep those knees turned out, out, out. And then to come out, we'll keep the knees moving out to the sides as we press equally into each foot, and then come on all the way up to standing. And then heel toe back to Tadasana mountain pose. All right, from here, we need to get to the floor. We're not vinyasing, to be clear, but we'll stand in mountain pose. And then let's do a reverse swan dive. So palms face up and even back a little bit. And opening up the arms all the way up. Palms touch. And then drawing the hands to heart center. Hinge at the hips. Forward fold all the way down. Inhale, looking up to the horizon for flat back. And release, and then let's step back straight to downward facing dog. So this is how we skip the vinyasa. We just step it back, maybe walking it out a little bit. And then scoop the belly in, gently lowering through hands and knees. And then come on all the way back to seated. Bring the feet forward into Tadasana staff pose. And then we will head into Paschimottanasana, seated forward fold. So lifting up nice and tall on an inhale. On an exhale, reaching forward. So reaching for whatever you can find, shins, ankles, or the feet. And just a few deep breaths here, feeling that nice length in the backs of the legs. There's also a little bit of traction in the back. And then slowly come on up. So that was Paschimottanasana. The English translation is west stretching pose. I usually call it seated forward fold because that's what it kind of actually is. But we're stretching the entire west side of the body because traditionally we face the sun as it's rising. So that's why the back side of the body is called the west side. So from here, we'll prepare for Marichyasana A. So you could use a strap here. I never did. I don't particularly like a strap here, but if you want to, you certainly can. For this one, the left leg stays where it is, and then we hug the right knee into the body. From here, it's a forward fold. So I like to lean over a little bit to the left and then reach the right arm on the inside of the knee. And then you can feel, so try to think about the hip, especially the right hip. So we don't want to just sort of move the whole body. We want to keep the hips where they are and feel, it's like your spine is rotating and you can feel the leg rotating. It's like that delineation. The body moves forward, but that knee is moving back. And then thumb turns down and we wrap around the leg. And if you're lucky, you get a nice shoulder pop here. And then we're trying to find our hands behind. And the trick is the right arm, really. We're internally rotating the arm. You can't see my right arm. You'll see my arm on the other side though. And then the other trick is to open up this shoulder. So if you keep your bent arm in place, then you open up this one. It makes this arm longer to reach for the other arm. Maybe you find your hands behind you. Maybe you find your shirt. I used to always find my shirt until I found the bind. And then if you're inhale to lengthen. On the exhale, you can fold forward. And then we'll slowly release back to Dandasana staff pose. Preparing for the other side. So this time you'll get to see my bent arm. So we'll bend the left leg in, and then I'm leaning over to my right, and then the arm is reaching on the inside of your knee. If you've got a really long leg, I don't. So your knee might be sort of near your shoulder. It makes it a little easier. I have to make sure my arm is below my knee, and then moving forward as my knee moves back. It doesn't actually move back, but I actually visually think of my knee as moving back. And then thumb turns down and then wraps around. And I just got my little shoulder to pop there. So the trick is, if your hand is down here, you're never gonna find the bind. The trick is you're bending the elbow, so you've got that internal rotation here. I can feel a stretch right in here. Feels nice, actually. And so, because if you're like, well, how do I bend the elbow? It has to internally rotate. And then, we can all do this with our elbow, but it's the internal rotation. So it does actually require some flexibility in the shoulder, which is why I love yoga, because it, cares about your outside of your shoulder mobility. So, and then when you're reaching for your hands, the higher up your hand is, the easier it will be to find the other one. If I just go like this, I have little T-Rex arms. I don't find the bind. I used to think, well, my arms aren't long enough, but there's tricks. So if I have my bent arm in place, then I'm opening up my right arm and suddenly there's more room. I'm actually opening up my shoulders to face the side a little bit, and then I can find my hands. So my shoulders don't have to be completely square, right? I'm inhale to lengthen. They do sort of square up once you find the bind, but that's more detail than we should get into today. And then slowly come on out and return to Dandasana staff pose. I do like that pose. Mrichiyasana A. I know I wanted to talk a lot about that because the next one is a Karna Dhanurasana, which I don't like as much. I shouldn't say that, maybe. But it's shooting bow pose, which is just awkward. It's just awkward, and so good luck. Here we go. So for this one, we start in Dandasana staff pose, peace fingers, reach for the big toes. So always the reason why we use our peace fingers, it doesn't actually state this in any of the yoga books, but I know this to be true. We use just 2 fingers so that you don't use your whole arm's strength to lift your leg. It's so that your legs will do the strength part and your arms are just there for show. So what we do is we find the big toes. Well, what if we can't? Then then it's even more awkward, and I'm really sorry. So then you bend your knees, but you find your big toes. Okay, so if your legs can be straight, great. If not, it's going to be a little more awkward, and it just is what it is. And then from here, the arms are straight. We lift up tall, and then you almost have to shift over to the left as you lift the right leg up. And then you draw like an arrow the right leg back. Okay, so the knee goes back, so that the foot moves towards your ear, and then you can sort of even pull on the left leg as well, the straight leg, and then you come out because you're like, that's enough, right? I think. And then we reverse course all the way back, and then you release the feet, and then you kind of go like this with the hands, because you know how you're not supposed to grip for dear life, but you do because it's awkward. And then you smile, and then you do the other side, lifting up nice and tall. Let me know at some point in life if anyone finds this not awkward. I would love to meet someone who's like, no, this feels fine, it's great. My foot's at my ear and everything's great. Inhale to lengthen, and then find the peace fingers with the toes, or the toes with the peace fingers, and then lengthening, lifting, left leg lifts up, and then we draw it back like an archer, reaching that left foot towards the ear, lengthening, and then we replace the foot forward and back, and then we release everything back to Dandasana staff pose. That was totally 5 deep breaths. We held that for you guys. If anyone asks, yeah, she totally counted to 5 and we held that, you bet. So from here, we get to move on. So Agni Stambhasana, I believe, is the next one, fire log pose. So this one is a really good hip opener. So there's two ways to get into this one. If you have the flexibility, you just bend the left leg in and the right foot goes on top of the knee, right foot on left knee, and then knee lowers down to ankle. So the trick is we don't want the feet in too much. That's the next one coming up. This one, the legs are stacked like fire logs. And if that is too challenging, there's a better way to get into this. So if you're in there, great, hold. And if not, we lean back onto the hands, and you might even need to help that foot over the knee. And that might be enough of a stretch here. If it's not, you can lean forward a little bit and then eventually make your way to this one here. So this is where blocks come in handy too. If your knees are speaking to you at all, if they're saying anything, lifting up the bottom knee and placing a block under it, or maybe between the two knees might help. And if your knees are still hurting a little bit, it's not a grin and bear it situation. It's a contact an experienced teacher situation. So wherever you're at, as long as you're feeling comfortable, holding and breathing. So comfortable might be a bit strong. We want to feel the stretch, of course, but it's not too much of an exaggeration. It should feel a bit nice, like a nice stretch. If you can, start to move forward and breathe. The key is to not do any gripping or guarding. If you are, you're in too deep. So you'd back out a little bit. And slow, deep breathing, especially on the exhales, relax through the hips. So this is where you want that body awareness. Check in. Am I guarding somewhere? Because it's interesting how we go through the motions and we don't notice, oh yeah, one of my hips is gripping a little. Relax. Maybe you're in it too deep. And then if there's the space, then you can move forward, but be sure that the hips are relaxed. I do believe, it's my opinion, that that's sometimes why the knees will hurt, because we're gripping and guarding in the hips. Just a few deep breaths here. And then we'll slowly reverse course, remembering which leg is on top. It's probably the right, but just double check. And then return to Dandasana staff pose. A couple little knee taps maybe. And then we'll prepare for the other side. So remember, you can lean back to go into that pose if you need, or just directly in, left leg on top. Situating your blocks as needed to be sure the knees are 100% okay. And then leaning forward, if that's available to you. If not, remain where you are. Either way, relax through the hips. Allow them. I even like to manually, just ever so gently, just take the flesh and externally rotate it so it's moving outward. If I place my hands with my fingers on the outside and my thumb on the inside, and I move my fingers down, that's how I want the whole leg to rotate in the hip socket. So I actually do sometimes, especially with my left leg, for some reason, it doesn't like to keep up. So I'll say externally rotate, and then I can feel my hip going, oh yeah, right, that's what we do. And then breathing free. And then slowly, slowly, come on up and release to Dandasana staff pose, couple little knee taps.
And then we'll prepare for Padmasana today. So this is full lotus posture, which is typically unavailable to most of us until we get fairly open in the hips. So wherever you get stuck, just hold and don't go further. So for this one, what we do is we bend the left leg as in Baddha Konasana, just as if we were going to go into the soles of the feet together. And then what we do here is the knee joint is closed. Once we bring that foot in, the knee joint is closed, and then it's a little safer to lift up the leg. And what we want is that lower leg to be at the same level. So the ankle is at the same level of the knee. It's not torqued outward, okay? So we don't want to have the foot higher than the knee, which is sometimes what people do. They'll just crank on the foot. So we actually lift everything up and then place the foot in the hip crease. And we want the sole of the foot facing up because everything is externally rotated. Then repeat on the other side. So for most of us, if we got here, then most of us will simply draw the bottom leg underneath. And this is your modified Padmasana. If you feel like, no, I think I can go further, what you do, it's a little more awkward, but you close the knee joint. Okay, so you bend that knee in, and then same thing again, you lift it up, but you can see the foot doesn't go higher than the knee, and then you just place that one on top in the hip crease. So it does require a lot of openness in the hips. And then even once you can get into this posture, it might feel tight for a while. Eventually it'll feel loose, where you can just sort of pop in and out without even using your hands. And then the other thing that happens too in this one, which I find interesting, is until you get used to it, the bones, the shin bones, you can feel the bones against each other. There's pressure until this pose loosens up a bit. Okay, but it does. Okay, not to worry. Then we come out. So you reverse course, keep that knee joint closed as you release, and then you can release it all the way. And then same thing with this one, keep the knee joint closed, and then release all the way. We'll repeat on the other side. So we started with the left first. Now we'll start with the right. Bend the leg, close the knee joint, lift it up, and place it in the hip crease. We want the sole of the foot facing up. My legs like to internally rotate, so I have to like coax them to externally rotate. And then repeat on the other side. So either just tuck that foot under, or if it feels like it's available, placing it up and over and holding wherever you're at. This is the posture that yogis will meditate in. There's a couple different postures. One is Virasana, like we did at the beginning of class. The other one is this one, Padmasana. And then to come out, reversing course. So keep that knee joint closed as you release. And then other leg, knee joint stays closed. And then we release to Dandasana, staff pose. And then let's do our little trio again. So Baddha Konasana, soles of the feet, feet together. I'm a little excited in my Baddha Konasana, almost tipped over. Lifting up nice and tall on an inhale. On the exhale, forward fold. And just noticing, are you a little bit further than at the beginning of class? Maybe so, maybe not, doesn't matter. We're only here for 5 deep breaths. It's already 4. And 5. Come on out. Heading into Parivrita Janu Shirshasana. So that's our revolved head to knee pose. So we'll bend the left leg, extend the right leg out to the side. So I'm not doing as much talking or explaining this round. Lifting up nice and tall, reaching for that extended leg. For 1. Rotating the heart to the sky. For 2. 3. 4. And 5. Belly scoops in, come on up. Before we switch to the second side, let's do a little Upavishta Konasana. We're already set up, so we're halfway into the other side, but we'll do this one first. Inhale to lengthen. Exhale, forward fold for 1. 2. 3, 4, and 5. On an inhale, come on up. Second side, Parivrita Janu Shirshasana. Bending the right leg in, left leg extends, reaching and lengthening. For a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Belly scoops in, come on all the way up. And then we'll return to Dandasana staff pose and lie all the way back. Preparing for Supta Parivartanasana, our one-legged twist pose. So laying all the way back. Might need to remove your ponytail if you've got one. And then for this one, I like to start with the feet on the floor so you can lift and scooch the legs. So arms out to a T position, palms facing down. Lift and scooch the hips up and over to the right so that your left hip is in line with your neck. Then extend the left leg down and straight, right leg hugs in and sending it over, but keep the right shoulder on the floor. And we're not here too long. Looking over the right fingertips, and that helps keep that right shoulder on the floor. If you have a block nearby and you'd like to place that right knee on a block, that sometimes helps. Be sure the right knee is inching up towards the left elbow. You don't want it all the way there. That's not the goal. But we do want it 90 degrees at least from the hip. So the knee is in line with the hip or slightly above. Belly scoops in. Gently press the low back into the floor. And then square everything up. Other side, we lift and scooch to the left so that the right hip is in the center. And then we'll extend the left leg down, the right leg down, left leg bends and moves over to the side as we look to the left. And then scooping the belly in, press the low back into the floor. Square everything up and we'll hug both knees into your chest. Gently rocking from side to side for Apanasana. And preparing for Shavasana. That was a weird slip. I was going to say Shavasana, happy baby, but I think we were supposed to do happy baby. Let's not. I'm committed to Shavasana now. I'm in. So as always with Shavasana, if your back would like a little extra support, feel free to keep the knees bent with the feet on the floor and allow the knees to tip into each other. If your back feels okay, extending the legs. Arms along the sides, palms facing up. And close the eyes. Softening everything. But especially through the neck and the shoulders. And all the way down the arms. Letting the fingers softly curl. Softening through the face. Softening around the eyes. And even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go. And starting to come back, wiggle the fingers and the toes. And gently roll your head from side to side. And reaching your arms above head on the floor for a big stretch, feeling totally refreshed. And bending your knees in one at a time. Gently roll over to the right side. Pausing for just a moment as you come back. And then slowly start to press yourself all the way up to Sukhasana, cross-legged seated posture. And taking all the time you need, but when you arrive, palms facing up on the knees, inhale, sitting up tall, and exhale, softly close the eyes. And taking those final moments to thank yourself for showing up to your practice today and taking care of you. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.